Hello, everybody, and welcome to Rethinking Aging with Richmond Aging and Engaging. My name is Jacob Montour, and I'm an occupational therapy student at VCU. This was created as part of my capstone project. This presentation and this training is based on ageism and awareness towards ageism, so I figured we would just begin by defining it and going from there. Merriam-Webster defines ageism as prejudice or discrimination against a particular age group. And in our society, ageism most commonly affects older adults. This can be seen in things like workplace discrimination, stereotypes about older adults being out of touch, or simply dismissing older adults' opinions and experiences based on their age. However, ageism can also affect younger populations. This can be seen in dismissing younger people as being quote unquote too young to have valuable input, or being assumed to be irresponsible simply based on their age. Now we're going to talk about some common ways that ageism can show up. The first one being internalized ageism. This is how we feel about ourselves as aging people, and ageism in which older adults marginalize and discriminate against other older adults. And in your time volunteering with Richmond Aging and Engaging, some of the participants who you will be working with may be experiencing this, so it's important to be aware of it. Next up, we have implicit ageism. These are the unconscious biases, attitudes, feelings, and behaviors towards people of other age groups, and it operates without conscious awareness or intention. So this is a form of ageism that we're not even aware of. It's implicit. Next up, we have interpersonal ageism. These are ageist comments and behaviors that can happen between people when they interact, so kind of that face-to-face ageism aspect. This may be negative, but it can also come across as with positive intent, but it's still based on stereotypes. And I think that last sentence is really important because people may do things or say things with positive intent behind them without realizing that what they're doing is ageist and can cause harm to people. Next up, we have benevolent ageism. These are patronizing paternalistic beliefs or behaviors that older people need to be protected because they are no longer able to make decisions for themselves. So one example of benevolent ageism could be overhelping, really just doing more than you need to because we're assuming that older adults aren't able to do it themselves. So interpersonal and benevolent are kind of go hand in hand because you can have positive intent behind what you're doing, but we may not realize that what we're doing is ageist. So next up, I want to give you guys the opportunity to reflect upon a couple questions now that you're familiar with some different forms of ageism. So the first two questions are, think about a time when you were on the receiving end of ageism and how did that make you feel? So I know one time I was on the, or a couple times I was on the receiving end of ageism, and it mostly had to do with receiving judgment from adults after I graduated undergrad and was still living with my parents, and getting comments like, "Oh, why are you still living at home? Don't you have a job now?" Things like that. Really feeling like made me feel uncomfortable, made me feel like I wasn't properly understood, and it's kind of the same exact mechanism that occurs when we grow older. People are misjudged and made uncomfortable, made feel like they're not properly understood simply based on their age. The next question is, has there been a time when you thought or said something ageist without even knowing? Something that I know I've done is comment, make just sly comments about my friend's age as we get closer to the age of 30. Uh, with like, there's no harm behind it, but we would just joke around about being 30 and how 30 is old when ultimately 30 is not very old and there's nothing wrong with turning 30. So next we'll talk about shared experience, and I feel like this is a really important slide because we all belong to different groups. Our identities are all unique, whether it's based on race, religion, gender, background, and they shape our experiences and make us all individuals in who we are. But aging is the one shared human experience that we will all go through. We're all going through now and will continue to go through. And if we're lucky and we have good fortune, we'll all grow old one day. And this means that the way that we treat older adults today really sets the tone for how we may be treated in the future. And it all comes back to living by that golden rule. It's simple, but it's very powerful. We want to treat older adults today the way that we would want to be treated when the time comes that we're older adults. Okay, so next we're going to discuss some cultural messaging because ageism is very deeply ingrained in our society. And many of us, including myself, don't notice how often ageism appears in our day to day lives. But oops, I'll provide some subtle yet harmful examples of what cultural ageism can look like. The first one is celebrating being carded. When people celebrate being carded because someone may mistake them for looking younger than they really are, and the underlying message behind that, and it's really implying that I want to look younger than I am because I don't want to look the current age that I am, which there's nothing wrong with looking the age that we are. The next one is anti-aging products. Really, again, underlying messages implying that you don't want to have wrinkles, you don't want to have gray hair, you don't want to turn old because old is ugly. Use our products, then they'll prevent you from turning old. Things like that. Next up, we have inappropriate birthday cards and media portrayal of older adults. And I could go on for a long time about this, but I'm sure you guys can think of examples of as well of inappropriate birthday cards you've seen, the media portrayal of older adults in TV shows or movies, and then discussing the aging trajectory. It's unique to think about, and it's interesting to think about because when we're younger, we want to grow up as soon as possible. We want to turn 16. We want to be able to drive. We want to turn 21 and do all the fun things that young adults do. And then there's a plateau in adulthood, and then our society tells us that there's a downhill slide filled with nothing but loss and decline, but it's really a myth. It's the downhill myth because there's also growth, there's wisdom throughout our entire lives, there's new opportunities throughout our entire lives. And so there's not nothing but loss and decline. There's so much growth, so much wisdom that comes with aging. Next up, we'll discuss language. And I think it's really important to always be mindful of the language that we use, regardless of who we're talking to. And so when referring to older adults or older people, simply using the term older adults or older people is preferred. And as you spend more time at Richmond Aging and Engaging, as you spend time at different sites, you're going to get to learn the individuals' names, and simply referring to them by their name is what's preferred because I know I prefer being referred to by my name, and I'm sure you guys do as well. Some language to avoid is the elderly, senior citizens, boomer, geriatrics. The term geriatrics isn't necessarily incorrect. It just refers to a branch of medicine that deals with the medical care and treatment of older adults. So, using geriatric to describe individuals or a group of people is something that we want to avoid. And overall, just using respectful and inclusive language so that we can combat ageism and change the narrative. So, next up, I just want to wrap up with the fact that we're all aging. And aging is not bad. Aging is simply change. It's a mixed bag of growth, adapting to new normals, maintaining new normals. And in reality, it's just like any other stage of life. We grow, we change, we adapt. It's the natural, and it's a lifelong process. Our goal is to promote dignity and respect for all older adults. Older adults deserve the same respect, autonomy, and inclusion as everyone else. And let's challenge the idea that aging means becoming invisible or less capable. Lastly, every interaction that we have, whether it be with your younger cousin, a sibling, a family member, your mom, your dad, your grandparents, each opportunity Each interaction is an opportunity to create an age-inclusive community and society. Last up, just have some additional resources. Thank you guys for listening to my presentation, and I'll see you in the next one.